The internet is full of fictional scary stories and movies alike, but what I find more terrifying than these are the true scary stories that happen to real people like you and me every day. Here are 3 terrifying true stories. "16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives were known to be popular students at the Bryant High School in Bryant, Arkansas. The two were typical teenagers, spending their weekends double dating or hunting together. In retrospect, the 80s seemed like the best time to be alive. However, Don and Kevin's case would put that thought into perspective. On the evening of Saturday, August 22nd, 1987, Don, Kevin, and a few of their friends were hanging around their favorite place, a car park. Even in modern times, car parks after dark are a regular hangout spot for teenagers with no place to go and nothing better to do. Just after midnight, Kevin and Don left the group, headed for Don's house. According to Don's father, Curtis, Don walked inside, grabbed his .22 rifle, and told him that he would be back soon. Curtis revealed that Don had taken the rifle because himself and Kevin were going spot hunting. Hours had passed, and in the minds of Kevin and Don's families, they were expecting them to walk through the door any minute. But just before dawn, something happened that would change the course of Henry and Ives' lives forever. Just as the sun peeked over the horizon, the 6,000-ton cargo train passed through Alexander, headed into Bryant. On its daily route to Little Rock, Stephen Scheuer was the engineer aboard that morning, and as the train chugged along, he noticed something on the tracks in Bryant. As the train got closer, he realized that 2 teenage boys were laying across the tracks. Stephen began furiously blaring the horns and trying to get the boys' attention, but it was to no avail. Within a matter of seconds, the train had run them over while Stephen was attempting to make an emergency stop. Stephen hopped out of the train, but it was too late. The police were called to the scene and the investigation began. The initial investigation was very brief, with the state medical examiner determining that both Don and Kevin had been under the influence of marijuana and that the cause of death was accidental. This verdict was not popular with the families who refuted claims that their sons used drugs. Bravely, the 2 sets of families began campaigning for their sons, desperate to find out the truth. It would later transpire that other members of the staff on board the train saw the 2 boys' bodies covered by a green tarp, and it wasn't until a closer inspection that they realized that the 2 boys lay underneath it. Bizarrely, this tarp was never recovered, and investigators would deny that Stephen ever told them about it. Then, 5 months after the incident, the families of Don and Kevin held a press conference to put pressure on the local authorities to reopen the case. It worked, and days later, the police had officially reopened the case. A second autopsy revealed that the 2 had smoked 2 to 3 joints on the night of their deaths, as opposed to the 20 that was quoted in the first report. This time around, the attending medical examiner also found evidence to suggest that one of the boys was already dead, and that the other was unconscious when the train came around. So who harmed them and laid them neatly across the tracks? Their cause of death was amended to probable homicide, and the investigation continued. The case was well known throughout the area, but despite this, few leads ever panned out. Those in the local community tried to help Don and Kevin's family however they could, but nothing ever came to fruition. There is one clue, however, that is worth mentioning, and that is the mysterious sighting of a man in army fatigues. This man was spotted near the tracks around a week before Don and Kevin were killed, and according to reports, he was acting strangely, and a few concerned residents called the police. When the police arrived and tried to speak to the man, he opened fire on them before running off. Unsolved Mysteries noted that on the night Don and Kevin were killed, witnesses also saw a man in fatigues close to the railway. Was this mysterious man responsible, or is it just a coincidence? As part of being featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries, Don and Kevin were once again autopsied by pathologist Joe Burton, who found that Kevin had possibly been hit in the face with the butt of a .22 rifle, and that tears on Don's shirt indicated that he had been stabbed in the back. As a result of this finding, the cause of death was officially changed to definite homicide, but despite all this movement, the case remains cold. Many in the area believe that Don and Kevin saw something they shouldn't have that evening. There are many rumors of drug trafficking in the area, and after the Unsolved Mysteries episode aired, a few tips came in claiming that's exactly what happened. Almost 35 years later, and we are still no closer to solving the mystery of who killed Don Henry and Kevin Ives. In June 2021, Linda Ives, Kevin's mother, passed away without ever knowing what happened to her son. The remaining members of the Henry and Ives families have vowed to keep up their hunt for justice. If you have any information about this case, you are asked to contact the Bryant Police Department at 501-847-0211. November 7th, 1872 was a historic day for Captain Benjamin S. Briggs of the Mary Celeste. That morning, himself, his wife Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 8 other crew members left the New York harbor, headed for Genoa, Italy. It was a momentous occasion, and everyone aboard was excited to see what the journey ahead of them was going to look like. Unfortunately, the journey was anything but plain sailing, and just under a month later, other ships made a startling discovery. On December 5th, 1872, almost a month after the Mary Celeste had left the shores of the US, the British ship De Gratia was sailing 400 miles east of the Azores region of Portugal when they saw a ship floating aimlessly in the waters. The captain of the ship ordered his crew to head towards the boat and offer their assistance. But as they drew closer, the name Mary Celeste on the side of the ship drew their attention. Those on the British ship had heard the name before and knew it had left New York in November, headed for Italy. So why almost a month later was the ship abandoned near Portugal? The captain of De Gratia ordered his men aboard, thinking that there were perhaps people inside who needed their help. As the crew descended into the underbelly of the ship, they found no signs of Briggs, nor the 8 crew members. The crew members' belongings were still inside of the quarters, and the only lifeboat on board was gone, with one of 2 pumps being disassembled. Other than the obvious missing crew members and captain, nothing else was damaged or seemed out of place. Some sources report that there was water in the bottom of the ship. However, other sources neglect to mention this fact. The crew of the De Gratia theorized that those on board had maybe starved to death, but a further inspection of the boat showed that there was at least 6 months worth of food and water supplies, putting an end to that theory. The crew members of the De Gratia were bewildered at what happened to the Mary Celeste and its passengers. Had everything gone according to plan, they should have reached Italy before December 5th, and it does not appear that any of those aboard ever reported into the port. The ship was eventually recovered by the De Gratia, who were able to sail it to safety and collect payout for doing so. This payout sparked rumors that the crew of the De Gratia were not as innocent as they seemed, and that their account of what happened on December 5th and the days before it is not entirely accurate. An investigation was conducted into this, and there were no wrongdoings to be found. This story has captivated people for decades, with authors, sailors, forensic investigators, and those who are interested in the mysterious and unexplained, all jumping at a chance to try and solve what happened to the Mary Celeste. Many theories are surrounding this case. One of those theories is that the crew held a mutiny after drinking some of the 1,701 barrels of industrial-strength alcohol aboard. Experts have pointed out that this alcohol was not fit for human consumption and would have made the crew ill, rather than murderous. Reports also indicate that all the ship's cargo was intact, putting an end to that theory. Some people believe that supernatural force is responsible, while others think that the crew of the Mary Celeste may have gotten caught up in bad weather, causing them to jump into a lifeboat and get lost at sea. There are hundreds of theories that exist out there. However, until new evidence comes to light, it seems like we will never know. In just 81 minutes, two unknown men managed to carry out the biggest art heist in history. And while no one knows their names, their crimes will forever be remembered. On March 18th, 1990, St. Patrick's weekend, two police officers arrive at the infamous Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, Massachusetts. It was around 1:24 a.m. when the two men stepped out of their car and headed towards the entrance. Two young security guards were on shift that night and were surprised to see two officers standing before them. The officers explained that they were responding to a disturbance call and asked to be buzzed in the building. Not wanting to challenge the authority of a police officer, the two security guards obliged. Within seconds of entering the building, the security guards were overpowered and restrained, unable to call for help. They would soon find out that the two police officers weren't police officers after all, and for the next 81 minutes, they made their way around the museum, collecting some of the world's most valuable paintings. After filling their bags full of priceless artworks and artifacts, the two men slipped out of the museum as if nothing had ever happened. It wasn't until the daytime security guards arrived at around 8 a.m. that the alarm was raised and the full scale of the heist was discovered. These pieces of art are often described as timeless and priceless, but experts from the museum estimated that the criminal masterminds had stolen around $500 million worth of works. An investigation was opened immediately, but the security guards on shift were unable to identify those responsible. Within hours, the news had spread across Boston, and news outlets were reporting on the heist of the century. The Gardner Museum heist is the single largest property theft in the world, and over 30 years later, the police and FBI are still no closer to finding the culprits. Several members of the mob have been tied to the heist, but the FBI has been unable to bring about any convictions or arrests. In 2009, Robert Gentile popped up on the FBI radar after Ellen Garante, the widow of Robert Garante, a prominent figure in the underworld, named him a suspect. Ellen alleged that in 2002, her husband had given Robert Gentile two of the stolen paintings at a lunch meeting. Gentile was extensively questioned by the FBI, but nothing ever came of the lead. the FBI believes that many of the artworks were passed on to prominent members of the Philadelphia mob, and that they are being kept hidden for safekeeping. The Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum is offering $10 million to anyone with information that leads them to the stolen art pieces. Anyone with information is asked to contact Anthony Amor, Director of Security, at 617-278-5114, or you can email reward@gardnermuseum.org. That is it for this one. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. This will help my channel grow. If you have a future story suggestion, or would like to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing me at creepyunsolvedmedia@gmail.com. I look forward to your comments below.